Hello and welcome. I'm Wesley Enoch. I'd like to just start quickly by just acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we're all meeting. There are many of us around the country who are connecting to our ancestral lands, our connections to our cultural antecedents, and also this idea of us as custodians of our arts and our cultural voices across the nation. My name's Wesley Enoch. As I said, my family come from Minjidaba, Quandamooka people, just off the coast of Brisbane. And I'm also the chair of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Arts Strategy Panel. And joining me here, Lydia Miller, who's the Executive Director of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Arts Unit here at the Australia Council. Firstly, just like to thank you so much for joining us. I know many of you have registered to be here today and are incredibly busy as we're dealing with such an upheaval, if you like, of so many things, so much information flowing back and forward. Now, I just need to check and see whether you are hearing us clearly. At the bottom of your page, on your screen there should be a little Q&A button. If you hover over that and click it and open up, you'll be able to then see a Q&A little window. You can actually put into there as your different questions and responses. Great hearing all these people saying you can hear us loud and clear, which is wonderful. Hello to you all. Thank you for joining us today. And also that as we go through, you won't necessarily be able to hear each other or see each other's questions necessarily the whole time, but please feel free to put your questions in there, also some of your responses or some of the things that you may be doing that's suiting your particular community or organisation or you as an individual artist. Put it up there because what we're going to be doing is looking at collating all these questions and responses to go back through the Australia Council, mostly to the Federal Arts Minister, to talk about the response from a First Nations perspective. So we'll be just looking at gathering at the moment. Even if you can't see each other, you'll be part of this great, much bigger network. So thank you. We're seeing now that there's over 116 of you across the nation just kind of all coming on board. So it's wonderful, so wonderful to have you here and to have us, if you like, a sense of solidarity and community as we have lots of community questions, lots of people that we're representing along the way. With your permission, we're going to jump back and forward throughout this. You'll be able to see me and Lydia at times. You'll also be able to see a little bit of a PowerPoint. So bear with us as we navigate the technology to get through to you. And as I was saying, we imagine this is the first of a number of these kind of gatherings online to talk about some of these issues. So just to go through the agenda as we jump into the next window there. So hello and welcome. The agenda there is just a quick little 6-pointer. The next thing on the agenda there is what this roundtable is about, the idea of connecting, of sharing, of identifying some ideas that might work for us, especially in the First Nations arts and cultural landscape. What are the networks that we have to share those ideas, and also navigating the future. What is it that we need to do over the next several months by the sounds of it as we go forward. The third part of the agenda as we move through, we'll be looking at setting the scene, what is happening, what information is flowing, what's getting out there. Number 4, a little pulse check. We'd love to encourage you to write onto the little Q&A section there how you're feeling, what's coming up for you, what's going on in your community, just to see if there are through lines, if you like, or themes that we can kind of gather together. Then number 5, we want to talk about what is the impact of the current situation, what the cancellations are, live music and festivals and art centres, what some of the financial impacts are. And feel free to share some of those stories, because us taking those stories forward to the minister, to different decision makers in different jurisdictions, it'll help us to, if you like, put the face, the First Nations face of this crisis out there. I'm also aware that there may be people who are connecting in allied areas, especially in health and rural and remote communities, who are incredibly scared, perhaps, but also concerned about the health of elders and and those vulnerable people in our community. So these kind of impacts could also be useful. And then the sixth part of the agenda as we go through, we'll look at what's next. What do we need to do as we go forward? And we'll be reading on the side there some of the bits and pieces of things. Marinda Donnelly, you're asking us how many people are online at the moment. There are 146 people online, and it's growing all the time. And it's great to get all these messages. Joel Bray, you can hear us loud and clear. Ruth Langford, thank you so much for joining us as well. So please feel free to write all of that stuff up in that little Q&A thing, and we'll get to as many as we can. We may not be able to get to all of you, but we will be collecting all of these things. So it's good that as the deadliest mob getting together, as Ali Murphy Oates is saying, as we get together and we share this, we can build our strength through our collective action as well. So just going on to this idea of the First Nations Roundtable, this what we're attempting to do, that's Lydia and me, this idea of connecting with each other in this moment of isolation, both, our social distancing, but also the kind of isolations that are doing it. It's worth kind of the idea of connecting and sharing with their... Jan Graham is just saying that she's sick at the moment of working from home, but sitting in on workshops and classes from home, I guess, through the technologies. Not the best way to learn choreography, yes, but it's keeping her sane, which is wonderful. So this idea of sharing and connecting is going to be very important. We already know that mental health in our communities can be quite a challenging thing, and also within arts and cultural environments. Our mental health is something we have to really look after and be careful of. So this idea of connecting and sharing, but also some ideas. We've got Marley Morgan here who's saying she's a photographer. Oh, sorry, is it a she or he? Sorry, maybe both. That they're a photographer, and this is their main source of income. And all the bookings are cancelled, and they're afraid that they'll be unable to cover some daily living costs. Can anyone offer advice? And we'll come to that in a second, Marley. So bear with us there as we kind of work through some of these bits and pieces of things. Again, we may not have answers today. We are taking all of these questions back and trying to get a sense, if you like, Lydia, of what kind of responses need to come out. So even if we don't have answers today, we'll be trying to find answers, and we'll be directing you very much to the website, to the Australia Council website, and you can look through in terms of these First Nations responses, as well as other broader responses from the Australia Council about this. We are not alone. You are not alone. As we work through these things, we were trying to work together, because these networks that we're talking about are incredibly important as we share ideas, because it's not just now. I know that the government's very much talking this language of a bridge. Don't know what that quite means, but the idea of the situation we are in now and where we need to be into the future, and how we can imagine what that future is and how we navigate that as well.
I think what we're going to explore during this is, obviously there is the immediate and the crisis point for some people. And then, of course, we'll look at a 3-month window, a 6-month window, and a 9-month window. So if we can continue this conversation and discussion over this period of time, because different priorities will change. And certainly I think you're now highlighting some of the really immediate aspects of just being able to meet all your needs, your living needs, as well as what will be happening to your art and cultural needs. So that's an important conversation that will be going on. But certainly we want to build responses in recognition of what your needs are. So that's really important that we're able to have this conversation, and you're able to kind of share this with us as well.
I'm seeing through the lines of questions here also the notion of those who are touring through schools, where a lot of that's been stopped as well. That's not just in art centres necessarily, it might be in other gatherings. And this notion too of the internet connections can sometimes be ad hoc or not working as well, that you might find yourself, yes, trying to work from home or trying to continue sales, if you like, but your website isn't functioning, or the NBN isn't functioning in your area, and that might be something we need to get a bigger response from as well. With your permission, we might move on then and look at some of the setting of the scene of what's going on at the moment. As you're aware, in the last 2 weeks, then the escalation of the of the virus and the infection rate, and this kind of exponential growth that we're seeing, that the social isolation and the social distancing we're finding as a response is trying to slow down the infection rate throughout the country, throughout the nation. The closing of the borders to international travel is, again, about slowing it down. And in many ways, if you've already seen, it's about flattening the curve. You may have heard this phrase a number of times, that we're trying to make sure that the peak of the infection rate and the severe occurrences of it, especially with the most vulnerable, those with underlying health issues, the elderly, that we try to flatten the curve so that the health system can deal with the life-threatening situations for those people in particular. So one of the biggest issues that we're seeing across the nation is what was first the gathering of 500, that being the limit. Now that's down to 100, and that we might find in the very near future it's shifting down to groups of 20 or 10. The argument that I'm hearing about this social isolation and only working in smaller groups is that it's easier to trace if you've been exposed. So this idea of smaller groups, you know who's in the group, you can actually contact them if there was a positive return of a test in that environment. I should say just 1 fortnight ago, I was in isolation as well. I'd come back from overseas, from America. I had a fever and a bit of a dry cough, and the doctor was great. And they just said, you need to go get a test straight away. And the tests are difficult to get hold of, especially through private providers. I would suggest my advice to you is use the public health system as much as you can. They're much better aligned, much better prepared for this than the private systems are. If those things are not a choice for you, to get onto the phone and talk to people as soon as possible about those situations that you might be in, or those symptoms that you're feeling. The isolation then was for 3 days, and the test came through within 2 days. It was a nasal swab, which was very simple, very clear. But this idea of looking after yourself and those around you is what's really important. And though we might be scared of the loss of income that we're experiencing at the moment, the loss of gathering and community that we might be experiencing, remember it's about the protection of human life, that we're trying to protect our elders, protect those who are most vulnerable in our community, and what we need to do is find the way through. It's great to see Jared Thomas coming in. Thank you so much for joining us, Jared. We've now got 171 people online listening to this, so thank you so much for coming on board and getting this together. Again, we won't have all the answers today, but we will have some way forward. What I'm hearing at the Cultural Ministers' Council, which occurred yesterday, was that many of the state jurisdictions are looking at direct ways of supporting the small to medium sector, those already funded in that way, those who are accommodated in government pieces of infrastructure, that there's ways of doing that, but they're finding it incredibly difficult to find the mechanisms to support casualised workforces, independent artists, technicians, front of house, people who are working shops, etc., who are losing out. That's incredibly difficult to do. So we're kind of looking at how we can kind of do all that stuff as well. I don't know what you're doing, but I'm reading that. I'm on top of that. So this notion of how we continue to look at what are the delivery mechanisms that we can look at this casualised workforce. This seems to be the biggest question that is coming through everywhere as well. We've got Fiona there, We're George, who's saying, my current situation as in academia in terms of a mid-analysis of the role of creative processes in relation to the cultivation of holistic well-being from an Aboriginal perspective. And it'd be great if there's any kind of advice you can give us, Fiona, to look at how we can look at that well-being, especially in the creative industries as well. So in terms of where we are now, what is happening, there are a number of high-level kind of structures that are being put in place. There are rescue packages. So I've just got to note that we seem to be dropping in and out. That might also be your local internet. So we'll try to work out if that's us or not, but just be aware that we'll continue going. And this is all being recorded, so you'll be able to access this whole webinar on the Australia Council website in the near future as we're going through. Many people saying that they're really clear there, so just be there. No dropouts from Jess Beck. Thank you very much for that feedback. So the idea of what's going on now is very high level and it's very structural. It's talking about existing companies. We're talking about, you may have already heard about the stimulus package that's been occurring in terms of how to stimulate the economy, and that there's a conversation about arts and cultural workers being part of a much bigger conversation about the casualised workforce throughout the nation as well. And so how do we add our voice to that? Other things that are happening at the moment, Lydia, I know the different arts centres around the place are closing.
Absolutely. I'm sure people would have heard that the Northern Territory has stopped access to remote areas because of the vulnerability of people. There are various areas occurring in the Cape York. There are various areas occurring in Queensland, such as Palm Island. So this is about containment, obviously, and management of the transmission of this particular COVID-19 virus. The impact of that is currently being dealt with by a number of peak bodies in terms of how they can best respond in those arts centres. And out of that, what we hope to do is bring that all to this particular forum so people are aware, and also think about what are some of the strategies that people can start to deploy, really, to be able to manage it. But first and foremost, that particular setting of the scene is that there's a lot of activity taking place that may not be obvious to people. There's also a lot of consideration of what are the needs of people, and obviously if people have living needs, how am I going to pay my rent, how am I going to live from week to week, and then the art and cultural needs. So part of that is to ensure that we can provide resources to one another that enables people to be informed or have access to information or be able to share or be able to kind of highlight what are really critical areas.
Some people are already writing in talking about the leadership of the Australia Council. Thank you very much for that. This idea of what the funding arrangements were and how they're being negotiated. I know that different state jurisdictions, especially a lot of organisations, are in the 4-year funding round as well. I know that Queensland's saying, well, they'll give a 12-month kind of extension, if you like, so that you can at least have some form of continuity for the next 12 months of understanding without necessarily having to deal with a funding arrangement there. We will have to get some advice from the Australia Council, because some of those 4-year announcements were due very soon. So we'll do some research on that and bring that to you as well.
Yes.
And the idea, again, many of you talking about the impact as independent artists or workers in that way, what that means as well. We've also got Elaine Crombie, who's online, who's there. She's a mere representative as well as an artist, and will definitely be feeding back to the union some of these questions. So please feel free to whack up some things there or put it all together as well. Just also the idea of the state-by-state conversations that are happening. Please, if you are already a recipient of support from your state, engage with them from a First Nations perspective. There are a lot of people who are opening up those conversations, especially for continuity of work. There are many of you already writing in, talking about the cancelling of contracts and things along the way. There's also some advice about people who are donating attendance fees and things like that to the organisation. See if there's a way of finding out how that could work for you to your advantage as well. And if there are, I know that there are some industry bodies out there. It'd be great to hear from the union whether there are, in fact, I know the Queensland Actors Benevolent Fund is doing a fundraiser. There's a number of online performance opportunities as well that people can put up work or are working from home in a performance mode. So looking at getting donations from there. But if many people saying that they're concerned about how to make the day-to-day issues work, from paying for food and rent, how that all works as well, about if you're at home and sick, and alone? How do you get that kind of support? So we'll look at some of those things and try to pass information around as well. What we might do, if there's anything else from setting the scene, we might move on to the next area, which is a pulse check. We've kind of been doing it as we've been going along. Feel free to write up onto your Q&A section there. We're now at 178 people online. And if there's a little bit, if you haven't already learned how to do it, there's a little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can just hover on that, open it up, and you can write in there some of your responses and questions. Again, we won't be able to do lots and lots of answers today. It's really about pulling all of this information together, doing an analysis and going from there. I mean, just on a very personal note, I'm scared. I'm really personally scared that what we're seeing now is going to be, that we will never recover from this fully. I'm really scared that what we're seeing in terms of the loss of markets, the loss of employment opportunities will take us a decade to get back in place. What we need to do is get over that fear in many ways, in my own sense. Like, fear stops us from almost imagining what the future is. And I know the government has been talking about the bridge, that we have to deal with the footing of the bridge on this side, and we have to deal with the footing of the bridge on the other side, and how we get there is very, very important. That this is a pandemic, one that we haven't seen for almost 100 years, since the Spanish influenza after World War I. And the sense of across the world is a big issue. I'm scared. It's all right to be scared, I think. It's all right to feel that. But what do we do as leaders, as artists, as people who are committed to the future? How do we go forward? And thank you for everyone kind of adding your words into that little Q&A box there. We might scroll down and have a little look at some more as we go through. That fear shouldn't stop us from imagining things as well. That we've got people there saying $90,000 of cancellations. They're independent, they're self-funded there, Barunga there. We are hosting an opening night for our own with numbers capped at 40 or 50. It's interesting. So still doing some activities of 40 or 50. Can I suggest that you also make sure you get their names and a contact, either contact number or contact email, because it's actually about how you get information around as well. Where are you? Where are we? It's saying, my concern is when filming or working in the arts, how do we get an email that can be sent to production companies? The film industry is working for right now, doesn't understand that we can't have many of our Aboriginal actors and extras come into film. As we know, the reason being because we can catch the virus on a film set. Indeed. And I think that whole idea of the social the distancing is very important along the way. Here we go. Yes, the restriction of movement into remote communities. Philip Watkins talking here about in Central Australia that land councils and regional bodies where they're restricting the movement of people into areas like that, and art centres in the region are responding differently. Some have closed, others are restricting the access to art centres to artists only, and others waiting to see what happens. I know there's conversations happening around the country around online portals, especially for sales, so that if people do want to support artists through sales, they can do that. Any word on the sole trader operators at the Cultural Ministers meeting, CMM, Cultural Ministers meeting? I keep calling it Cultural Ministers Council, which is different. Glenn, there is no word of this. I talked to my sister who's Arts Minister in Queensland, and they're still federally formulating what that means. We don't quite know what the federal response is, and it should be a federal response, but how all casualised labour looks at that is going to be very, very important along the point as well. Amar saying that with rapid changing in digital transactions and state economic shaft-powered tactics takes place, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander digital sovereignty will become more important. Yes, indeed. Looking how China has adapted its behavioural economics is very interesting. So looking at how we also hold on to our sovereignty in the digital environment. And I should say too, I know I work at the Sydney Festival. One of the biggest issues has been this opportunity for scamming. People are scamming at this point, sending spam emails that kind of do. So we are all vulnerable in lots of different ways. So look after that digital thing as well. We're just hearing here that Sherburg is closed. I imagine to its community so that the virus can't get in and can't jeopardize people as well from yesterday. There we go. And Hotta has introduced, here we go, Amala Groom saying, Hotta has introduced a great initiative yesterday for visual artists to make digital work. Visual artists, please excuse me, need more funded orgs to provide us self-employed visual artists with new funded opportunities to keep making work. So have a little look at those online ways of making things happen as well. Min, thank you that we're not dropping in and out. That's good for you. Good to know the Gold Coast is working well for us. And also, just tell us if you feel like you need somewhere to say how you're feeling, that this is also important as well. Thomas E.S. Kelly, the extra sexy E.S. Kelly, as he tells me yesterday. Thanks for informing us. It is being recorded. So since Mansell and Tari Sainsbury and I have to both run off. Yeah, so it'll be here. And in fact, Tom, to say that there's more coming as we go through. Susan Richards saying to us that Yarrabah is closed. Ruth Langford saying that it's important to look at the closure of Aboriginal social enterprises and community creative hubs, what that means for a community as well. All the bookings cancelled means no income, and many of you are not government funded. In that way. I should add to this too, the conversation around the tourism industry, that many of us working in arts and cultural environments are also working in the tourism environment as well. So there could be issues there that we may not be connecting through Australia Council relationships. So if you are out there and you know of our brothers and sisters who are working in the tourism industry and they need access in terms of arts and cultural support, please kind of come in there. We have 177 people online, 176, there we go, someone popped out. Philip Watkins is saying maintaining artists' income is high on everyone's thinking, agreed, and especially when we go into lockdowns, how are we going to do that? If you have suggestions, if you have ideas, be good to kind of throw them in there, throw them up on there. Again, we won't be able to say everything, but to kind of pull it all together and to be able to share some of these suggestions along the way. I know that the Darwin Art Fair and also KIAF, they're talking about a couple of online kind of structures that might help along the way if those events have to be cancelled. So there's some thinking there as well.
People are thinking a lot about digital platforms, and of course in terms of looking at that particular model for delivery, there obviously needs to be a fair bit of work done around that as well. Someone was raising the other day that whilst they wanted to deliver music through those particular platforms, the issue that came for them was about rights. Right, and so in terms of working through the rights issue, we will work with areas like arts law to really look at how artists can actively use a digital platform, if that is the new model that we have to engage in for this critical period of time.
We've got Travis DeVries here who asks a very interesting question. Are you aware of any stimulus packages being developed that are going to be aimed towards the First Nations arts industry specifically? Most of the industry is not part of major companies, so won't be able to access any of that particular support. At this point in time, I'm not aware of anything that's First Nations. And in many ways, what we're doing is gathering this information to help get something very specific. Are you aware of anything?
We will be looking at gathering a First Nations position so that we are very clear and everybody is very clear in this environment, including our colleagues in the federal government, about what the needs are specific to First Nations and what some of that impact is, and also what I think we've got a majority of independent creatives out there. So your contribution is really important because obviously the stimulus package is looking at the arts. There will also be a stimulus package which also impacts on First Nations across this country and other sectors. So of course we want to bring this all together to be able to really put forward the best case for saying there needs to be quite a considered investment into how people really navigate this next 3 to 6, 9 months.
There's a lot of responses coming through very strongly supporting this idea of what is a First Nations response, especially in the arts and cultural industries and communities, that's what's really needed. This idea of how do we have a First Nations response, especially given, as Travis was saying before, this conversation, which is without kind of government-funded entities or mostly sole traders or individuals, artists, that it's difficult to get the kind of responses that we need and how that might be able to work. And also music is what I'm hearing here as well. Shelley Morris's agent, which I just, sorry, Emily, I couldn't see your last name then, but the idea of how music's being impacted as gigs just dry up all over the place at the moment. We've got 178 people online, which is fantastic. And just a reminder that this is being recorded. And if you're online now, but if there are people out there you think should be involved and listen to some of this conversation, that you can, when it goes up on the website, you'll be able to link in and kind of happen as well. There's a few conversations, Lorraine here talking about the regional networks, Regional Arts New South Wales and the Sydney office. Can't speak for them, but she was saying that now that there's been drought and fire, and that this, I'm reading into that, Lorraine, this idea of an accumulation of issues along the way, how it's this accumulation is what's problematic, and that we need money. Very, very quickly, we need the money to go into the hands of artists. Mark Howard is saying, if you are a pay-as-you-go ATO, or Australian Tax Office, will return your prepaid income from this year's return. So, here we go. Here's a piece of advice. Thanks, Mark. So if you prepay your tax, as sometimes sole traders will do, it looks like the ATO will return your prepaid income from this year's return. So have a little look at that and see how the ATO can help you if you're a sole trader in that way. They keep sending surveys. This is Lorraine again, after different crises, and have surveyed the state for everything by the sounds of it. And we need to kind of look at that impact as well. And that's maybe a criticism of even this forum. We're pulling in ideas, but where are the concrete steps? Where are we kind of moving forward? Sarah Ma saying that she feels scared and confused. And I share that feeling with you, Sarah. The idea too of the anxiety and fear is higher in the community. Thanks, Patrick, that's Philip. Sorry, Philip Watkins saying that. And Mark Howard very much saying it's healing through sharing. That this feeling that we've got, this feeling of being alone, exhausted, that we're pushing through this exhaustion, Marlene says, and this idea of the shock and sadness of it, that we're working on a lot of these issues as we go. Jennifer has to go, but she'll email some information and some suggestions, which we're very, very grateful for. April Phillips is saying that she feels a combination of shock and sadness, working on virtual education options about and with Far North, First Nations peoples, but fear that without tech at home, many of our First Nations students won't be able to access this content. So lots of feelings there, Lydia, about this kind of what can we do,
yes,
and looking for guidance,
yes,
along the way as well. What is the Australia Council doing in terms of processes at the moment? What's going on internally?
Internally, we're doing a lot of work to look at the way that there can be flexibility within arrangements, and also what potential impact is for organisations and small to medium. Of course, we're very, very aware of the independent creatives and how people are in a very much crisis situation because they've had cancellation of various events and gigs, and people are really unsure and uncertain about where their income is coming from. So part of that, to understand and to really rein in that information, is to hold these particular roundtables to be able to ensure that we get the best picture of what this is and what are some of the arrangements that can be put in place. Some of those are living need arrangements, obviously, and if there's a resource that we can say, here is, here's information with Centrelink, here's where you could probably navigate in that particular way that meets your immediate needs, those resources are there. In regards to what is the possibility then for the way artists could then be engaged, and what would that look like in terms of supporting all the cultural infrastructure to offer those opportunities? That's what we're working through. So it's really generous of you to share how you're feeling, because it's such a confusing, uncertain, displacing time. And I know there's a great deal of anxiety, and I think in some respects, part of these forums are to bring us all together to ensure that even if we don't have answers, other people will have answers, that you can hear what other people are doing, that you can connect, that you can share. And that in that we will get through this together.
Maybe we've been doing this kind of at the same time. Maybe we'll move to the next point, which is about what is the impact of the current situation. Many people saying that, again, the contract basis of lots of employment seems to have disappeared. Well, we know it's disappearing, and that there is a general sense of dread about paying rent, paying for food, paying basic, I imagine, medical and other expenses as well, and that seems to be the biggest story going forward, the biggest thing that needs to be addressed going forward, especially for the federal government along the way. Glenn saying that to date, the economic stimulus seems to have focused on the existing organisations, the small to medium and large organisations, and not much conversation with the sole traders and those who operate from invoice to invoice. And that there's all these cancellations happening along the way. We've talked already the impact of the closing of communities, closing of art centres, the idea of the cancellation of festivals and large gatherings, the cancellation postponements of live performances across the board, and also the gatherings. It's interesting, I was talking to someone about the impact of the stopping of sport, that sport being a lifeblood for our community as well, and the gathering of people. We talk often about arts and culture, but sport, and suddenly you can't gather with your footy mates and it's not the same to be there just virtually watching on television. Dan Mitchell's saying that they're worried about elders and vulnerable community members, super concerned about arts industry workers and their ability to survive this period. I share that concern, Dan. It's a very tricky time, to say the least. Nadina Dixon is talking about creating more digital content as well. And Julie Goff is looking at the cancellations of things in June and August. Some of the stuff coming through also about confusion or lack of hope about what the time frame will be. What I'm hearing is that everyone's planning for this next 2 months. And this is not official. This is just what I'm hearing, and this is not verified. But I'm hearing that there's going to be a peak in May and a peak in August in terms of infection and hospitalisation. So that this, depending on how the spread works and how these containments work along this period of time, we are preparing for anywhere between a 2 to 4 month situation as we are in now, which is not full lockdown, but minimal gatherings and still movement through. And the idea of this could go as far as 6 months. It's unofficial, but we're trying to work out, we'll get more information about the virus as the Northern Hemisphere comes into summer, because it is a winter virus. And as we go into winter, there's a real concern for that. And especially as the winter virus hits large continents like South America and Africa, where the health networks and health systems aren't as well developed as they could and should be, how the spread works in these kind of winter environments in those two continents, that will be of grave concern to us all. But we will be looking at the patterns of behaviour of the virus in the Northern Hemisphere. In many ways, this could be something that could go anywhere, could go for 6 months perhaps. And we should prepare ourselves for that. And we're asking the government for a lot more support and guidance along that. Jax Compton is saying, my family's stressed and scared and worried. My husband is a cultural independent sole trader. 28 events and gigs cancelled or postponed. NAIDOC Week is going to be moved. I'm even hearing that different NAIDOC Week celebrations are going to be cancelled. And this is really the most profitable time of the year. That's interesting to look at, that in fact many of us make more money and support during this time of year, and we might find that income source disappears. As Philip Watkins was saying earlier, these large-scale independent arts markets, etc., are a very important time for the economic development. Jared Thomas saying here that the protection of our old people is paramount, and we need to protect health first and foremost, and then rebuild. Totally agree. There's the anxiety, this sense of we need to protect the cultural custodians, especially in our elders. That's really important. Elaine Crombie saying, thanks for your truth, Wesley. Yes, well, as much as we can find the truth, Elaine, where everyone is finding their own way through, and that's why we thought this was a very important place to gather. There's 182 of us online listening to this live, and hopefully if this is recorded, it will go out further than that as we kind of move around and tell people to come online and see this as well. Maylene's also talking about the Victorian NAIDOC committee. She's a member there and seen a lot of the work going there. She's seen our elders and storytellers hit hard by the loss of work. Yes, agreed. And many of us, it's not just that it's the virus and our health. It's this virus, the COVID-19 virus, and our ability to maintain our health. Yeah. You know, as many of us have underlying health issues, that it's good to be there. Julie Goff saying it's great to be together. She's feeling a bit emotional. I am too, actually, as we see so many people sharing their pain. Soul traders should write, this is Marinda Donnelly saying, soul traders should write to the events that have been cancelled and ask still to be paid in good faith. That sometimes these organisations are more able to gather support from the government entities than the sole traders, and maybe we should look at the Australia Council having a response to that. Yes, whether we can get them through there as well. Yes, and this ability for sole traders and individuals to get through there. Many of us are talking about artists, but I know that the casual workers who are working in galleries, who are working also as technicians or front of house staff for venues, a lot of festivals and gatherings that also need support staff, food vans, people who do catering. There's a huge range of people who need that support. Gwenda's saying here that independent sole traders need more support from the arts, especially in the arts and education area. That's hard to ask for schools to pay with those cancellations in place as well. It's interesting, this education area, which sometimes falls outside of our remit or seeing how that works. I'm just thinking before about tourism. Tourism, yes, also arts and education seems to sometimes fall out of our view, so we need to look at that. If there is anyone out there who does look at large gatherings in an arts and cultural space, let's say a cultural festival, what kind of guidelines for cancellation there are, what kind of timelines you're putting in place. I'm seeing a lot of large gatherings cancelling all the way up to September at the moment, mostly because of the advertising and telling people it's on or not, that it's sometimes safer to be cancelling way in advance than holding people's hopes up for too long, that you might have your contract or you may not, that to really hold on and say what's reasonable, what's the most reasonable thing that you can do going forward, is sometimes to give certainty, even if that certainty is tough. Like if you're thinking now that June, July, you may be doing your event, get some proper advice from local areas about how that might be as well. Lan Levine says, feeling like this might never recover for the entertainment industry. I agree. I'd prefer everything to close down so that we can keep the pain short. They've lost $50,000 of income to date. That's a big loss, and I'm feeling that for you, Lan, too, feeling that you're not alone in that loss. And how do we, pay rent or mortgages if you've got them, or even loan repayments for cars, or a whole range of things. and that this idea of what recovery would look like as well. I was talking to one body which was saying, they've got some reserves, they've got some money, they've got some savings. Do they spend it now to try to get through all this, or do they hold on to some of those reserves to deal with the recovery? And only you can make that choice for yourself. But to work out where you put your resources, do you say, all right, I'm going to put this money aside or these resources so my organisation can recover, or I'm going to spend it now to keep everyone rolling along? It's a very difficult situation. Philip Watkins has been very vocal here, writing lots of times. Thanks, Philip. The Arts Centre staff at the local coalface attempting to manage expectations of artists, but also the expectations that they can provide the social and, you're off the screen there, and I guess cultural supports that need to happen as well. Social and health support, thank you, where it's limited or non-existent. And I think we were talking earlier about the rural and remote communities, that there's a sense of isolation already, and the further isolation and what that might mean. Kieran Einfield is saying we need art to point to the difference in tax contribution and the bailouts between artists and the big companies like Virgin and Qantas. Marinda Donnelly saying, can the Australia Council broker some collaborations between First Nations health services and arts and cultural peak bodies? We need to work together. It might actually be, it's interesting that those on the ground, those in local communities might be better positioned to collaborate locally than to get some kind of national body. Having said that, we should have these conversations nationally as well.
Absolutely. I mean, part of this is so that we can all have clarity about what's being faced, and certainly with the peak bodies in health, as well as the National Indigenous Australians Agency, who have influence across various sectors. It's to bring this together so we have a very clear picture of what's going to affect First Nation peoples right across this country, no matter whether you're placed. So I noticed some of the commentary which was about, can you put a figure to what those lost earnings are, or projected lost earnings? That would be really good, because we are talking tin tax in terms of what is the dollar amount that we really want to put forward in a case that is about the stimulus package, being able to respond to First Nation situation for arts and cultural organisations. So that would be great, please.
Just in pulling some of these themes together, I'm seeing that we do need to broaden the remit of our conversation around education, health, and tourism, to make sure those workers who are in those allied industries using arts and culture is very important. Kieran Einfield is saying that they're running an artist survey in Victoria, and now they're asking these questions of First Nations artists, which is great. That's fantastic as well. This is a pretty universal thing, that we're talking about the sole traders, the independent artists, really getting in there as well. We're getting a flow of information now. Please put it all in there. We may not be even able to say everyone's name as we go through, but we're recording all of this so that we can analyse your responses and come back to you as well. The individual losses seem to be racking up there in a big way, in the tens of thousands for individuals over this period of time. I know some of the large organisations are eating into their reserves to keep maintaining, which is a very good thing. And someone who's working online a lot, this is Travis DeVries saying that 70% of his income comes from live performance, even though there's a lot of online work, and all them being cancelled means that it's pretty tricky. Ali Murphy-Oates from Muglin Performing Arts is looking for performing artists with existing work who can participate in a series of Facebook Live takeovers. These could be anything from solo concerts, dance workshops, comedy sets, acting masterclasses, spoken word performances, and much more. There's a pilot program, and it's a paid opportunity. So check out the Muglin website, which is MOOGAHLIN, Muglin, MOOGAHLIN.org / look for it. It's a different spelling, but look for it then for their Muglin Live event there. There's some paid work there, folks. Ali, you might be inundated very soon. Jane Sligo, she says that France has announced yesterday a 45 billion euro plan to help businesses, including 10 million to help music industry professionals, recorded and live, and not any perception on exception maybe that is on live tickets tax by the Ministry of Culture. No details of how and when yet, and I think they but also that the arts are a very small component to these much bigger programs and how we look at that. I know that some people are saying also looking at radio stations playing First Nations music more often to help build the royalty pool for people along the way, which would be good as well. Emily Johnson saying interested in online solutions to be able to provide services to students and at-risk youth with new distancing measures in the education department as well. Thanks, Emily, for that. Like, what ideas and things can we do? Leonora is saying performing groups and individuals on lockdown in remote communities are being affected. No visitors and tourists, cancellations of gigs in the communities, and we can't travel out as well for booked performances. So the double whammy there, no one able to come in and them not able to go out. And so income absolutely limited along the way. Just saying too that we're very much the small to medium sector, the sole traders, that many of us work in that environment, and so how to get that support. And I'm hearing that we need the Federal Arts Minister to really step up and give voice to our casualised workforce in the arts and cultural areas well.
Yes. Well, at present, I think the Minister is working through a range of options in consultation with the industry and the sector, and certainly there are different discussions being held which will be fed into those particular forums where they can consider just how wide this really is, and that includes sole traders and the importance of sole traders.
Ruth Langford saying she's swaying between fear and strength of hope for a new way of being that acknowledges and honours Indigenous ways of healing that includes our creative arts practice. So I'm with you there, Ruth, how our strength and how our sense of community and how we support each other has so many different lessons to teach the whole country in many ways, how we look after each other and how we have this bigger conversation. Folks, I'm aware that it's now about 8 minutes to 3 and we are planning to finish at 3:30. I want us to take us to the next point if we can. There's still plenty of things there. Please put up as many ideas, suggestions as you can. We can't get to all of them at the moment. And we can't provide lots of answers yet. We can just provide these moments, and hopefully through the website of the Australia Council, we'll be able to get some more information to you along the way. But just to say and to acknowledge that we're feeling, with all of this, what is it now, 169 of you online at the moment, that your fear, your sense of uncertainty, your anxiety is being heard, and that we are stronger together when we share, that we know as our community is that we tell our stories and we feel stronger for them being heard. So thank you so much for being online and being part of this gathering of information so that we can help create a First Nations response to this COVID-19 crisis from an arts and cultural perspective from around the nation. So thank you so much. It's the thing that we're hearing again and again and again, how much we're being maybe left out of the conversation a lot of the time. But moving on to what's next, how we collectively work together, what's our next steps. I can say right now that this isn't the last time we'll have one of these events, one of these moments. That and I know there'll be people out there who are not connected to the internet or find the internet difficult. I know some of you were saying that your internet connection may be moving in and out. So it's important that you spread the word and keep connected. If not virtually, then hit your phone. God, this thing now, hit the grapevine, hit the black vine, and get the message out there. But if those who are online stay connected through to the Australia Council, and this webinar will be accessible. You'll be able to listen to it all again. You'll be able to add different comments along the way. and we will be gathering and analysing that information to build some strong arguments to go forward. What some of the story, or like, I don't know when, actually maybe this is a question for all of you out there. How regularly do you think you'll want these events, these gathering moments in the next, let's say over the next month, when it's a crucial time? How often is it useful to get this kind of information? So weekly is, Christina, thank you for that. Weekly is a good thing. Great. Yeah, weekly, then fortnightly, then monthly. Yes, as we get more information and more certainty. So what we might do is go, let's try to do this weekly. And is Friday a good day, or should we look at another day of the week that suits everyone best? Sometimes it's good, like a Friday at the end of the day may not be as good as, say, a Thursday or something like that. Fridays are generally good. People are saying Friday's good. Okay, and go into the weekend with ideas. Okay, that's good advice. Thank you very much. Some people saying Wednesday, no, Friday's good. Marinda Donnelly saying Black Dance is going to do a survey for independents and sole traders. So watch on their platform for that as well. Probably not the best time, but great time for our industry and culture to be innovative and how technology is working. And moving forward, it would be interesting to see what that will look like. Oh, yeah, thank you, Michael. So at the moment saying, this end of the week's not such a bad idea. Any day is good, Julie Goff says. Friday. Okay, the general consensus from those who are responding are saying Fridays are useful. We'll look at that, and so we'll plan for next Friday for another gathering of this as well. Amala Grimm, just a little side note, Amala Grimm saying that she's using her house as a gallery. She lives next door to an Aldi on the main street in Bathurst, so she's making a banner to hang out of her balcony that reads Marramung, love and kindness, and she's making more digital work to be available online. That's great. There's 5 people at Ilbitri Theatre listening in. Fantastic. All the beautiful people at Ilbitri. Great to have you there. So going back to this idea of going forward, we're going to say that the next gathering will be next Friday. And the idea too of how we will look at a weekly gathering until we can work out some more certainty along the way, or even just to get our anger out there half the time. God, I can say, hand on heart, I'm confused and a bit angry that arts and culture are being left out of this conversation, let alone the First Nations kind of conversation, which is so vital for the whole country, that we don't lose ground along this way as well. I'm interested to hear back from the Australia Council about the 4-year funding as well, so that hopefully before next Friday we've got a response to that. Also that there seems to be a real urgency to get some position on the casual workforce that and artists and technicians, etc., who are out there, so that there's some kind of response, or at least an argument that we're going to put forward to government. We can't tell, we can tell government what to do. They won't necessarily listen. But this notion of how we move forward is having clear messages. And can I say out there as well that it's very, very important that you press buttons, get people to hear things as well. Anonymous attendee. Hello, anonymous attendee. We're noticing a lot of community fatigue. Oh, yes. Many companies in the small to medium sector have closed their doors and their laptops, not only because of the effects of the pandemic, but because the uncertainty has contributed to creative and organizational fatigue. Yes, agreed. That many of us just go, I can't, what can I do and how can I do it as well? Are there any other suggestions out there of what we need to do to go forward? What is it that needs to happen? There's lots of information online, and we'll look at sharing some of that. Helena Goulash is saying she agrees totally with the sentiments, feeling the same way, and how we can move forward in that. Sticking together, a virtual festival. Manusha is just saying there. What does a virtual festival... Actually, Manusha, just check out, because I think Muglin was saying something similar. They've got an online platform that they're looking at. That might be an interesting thing too, to say, what are the existing materials online that we can aggregate
Yes,
in
I think
some
we can bring those
respects,
together for next week.
which could
Provide
be
those
fun.
resources.
Yeah. Just saying, Muglin's Lily Shearer at Muglin's saying they've postponed Biami's Nongi Festival, Nungu Festival in Bawarana. Yes, I read that too, Lily. Sorry to hear that, but all for the strength of your community, keeping them strong. I know that the Quandamuka Festival we're talking about, even though that's at the end of August, we're going, should we make a decision soon about that? Lots of people talking about look at the opportunities in this adversity as well. Is this an opportunity to look at things in a different way? Well, what are those different ways? That's what we need to look at the moment. Delivering materials by drone, Susan Richer says. Some communities like Araku and Hopevale are already devastated, especially boarders. Oh, yes, people who are boarding in Cairns and Townsville being sent home to community also poses a risk. Those people who are boarding in schools. That's interesting. I know that NAISTA have already sent home a number of their students because that the potential isolation culturally could also be a big, important issue to take into account, worth kind of looking at as well. It's 3 o'clock now. We've got about half an hour. Gilda Andrews says the language around isolation has us believing that we're disconnecting from society and community, even disconnecting from country. How do we encourage a grounding here? Perhaps not to isolate completely, but to make other connections whilst we're marooned at home. How can we counter a total notion of isolation by encouraging connectedness, and not just online, in the backyard, through the windows? Thanks, Gilda. That's lovely. This notion of how do we keep connected to our mobs, our country, even if we're maybe sitting alone in our homes, how are we staying connected to each other and not just online? Here we go, Jazz Money is saying, would love to hear what community would like to see from the big institutions, from the Art Gallery of New South Wales or the MCA or the National Gallery of Victoria. How could they assist digitally or otherwise? If you've got any suggestions there, put them up there. We can have a little readout in a second. Some people are having to go off to other meetings. Yes, thank you very much. We might also be kind of coming to the end of our time, even though we've got another half an hour on the clock. If you've got ideas, please put them up there. We don't have to keep moving on if there's things here. Guarantee. Alicia Jones is saying Brisbane Festival has a First Nations producer role that they're advertising to get into that as well, if there's anything's there. And there's certain links that are coming up. Songlines.net.au COVID-19. There's a link there. Thanks, Kieran, for that. And it can be an open contact list of all attendees divided into states for contact details. Oh, are we allowed to do that?
Well, we have privacy issues, but I think in respect to that, I mean, it would be good to get an idea from people if they want to put up some degree of contacts that they could share with one another. In terms of what's next, we've talked about these will be weekly, and it's also how would you like to see this roundtable service you in respect to some of the areas you want to talk about, because there's a lot of information, there's a lot of ideas that people have come up with, and there's a lot of concerns people have had. So in that regard, we could each week bring up a bit of a focused conversation about specific areas. Some people have mentioned access to remote communities or digital platforms or online platforms to present work, or even connecting online as well. So in that sense, please feel free to put up key topics that you want to see discussed, and we do a bit of a deep sea dive on that. And also what you consider to be kind of the most immediate concerns, the medium and the long term. And when I say that, it's like, what's the next 3 months do you think we have to sort out, or what you need to see sorted out in your area? The next 6 months, the next 9 months, up until the end of the year.
Some of the things coming through already, loss of income is the most important thing.
Yeah.
The idea of funding online presentations, the online work is seems to be important as well. Monetizing online performances and gaining sponsorship for guaranteed payment. So again, there might be a whole income and money line, and also the notion of how online platforms can be used and how valuable they are. Some people saying to, NBN access, how that kind of works as well. How do we keep maintaining those things? Some work through saying how do we work regionally and working together in there as well. Kildargan at the State Library of Queensland, we're looking at how we can involve artists in delivering our programs online. So maybe there's also a central place for employment opportunities that the Australia Council could quickly look at, a aggregation of performance opportunities, online sales, and also maybe to look at the audiences that are out there. This notion of if there are kind of online, let's say, performance works or films or things that we can say, here they are, they're free access. Check out Netflix, or I don't know if we can advertise, but check out these things are online, so we can actually start to advertise a little bit more. The Australia Council is also collating all events and festivals that are being cancelled and postponed. So please let us know as we get through there, as we get information as well. Change the language from social distancing to physical distancing and social solidarity, virtual sovereignty. And this is inspired by Ben Gratz. Thank you, Emily Wells, for that. He's been talking about this idea of social solidarity, just even though there's physical distancing going on as well. Canberra Artists Action Group have identified 7 critical areas and have established a working group for each to identify issues and solutions. And go to the Canberra Artists Action Group Facebook page for full details. Basically, it's community supporting community. So check out that one. That's Jennifer there telling us a little bit what's happening in Canberra. So there's a few people who are happy to have their details shared. Actually, if you are happy to have your details shared, maybe if you send them to us in this format, if you send us a message with your format of the details there, we can then we'll take that as permission to share them. How's that? Leah Flanagan there, Leah Flanagan from APRA says that Support Act has the micro grants for musicians, and to contact Leah Flanagan at APRA. So if you're a musician and you're looking for a micro grant, I don't know what dollar amount that's up to, you can check out Leah Flanagan at APRA, APRA, and their program called Support Act. Happy for deets to be shared. If you are happy for your details to be shared, write them into the comment. We won't just rip them off from somewhere else. You'll have to write them into the comment so that we've got your permission to share it in that way.
You can also send contacts to the online event email. That will capture it as well. Thanks.
It's so wonderful. There's 165 of you who've stayed on for this hour. It's so beautiful. And, I know many of us are feeling alone. So it's so great to feel so connected at this point in time. I know Lydia and I, well, there's 4 of us in the room. You don't see the other 2. But Lydia and I are in the room here, and there's at least us together. But many of you are sitting alone at a computer, kind of tapping away. And just that sense of people feeling together, feeling that solidarity is very important. I keep getting a sense that the First Nations arts and cultural experience is very, very important, and we shouldn't forget that we need to make sure that we just not all lumped in together with everyone else, because there are very specific things to our communities that we need to be addressing. If there's anything specific like that you go, well, as we've been hearing about the rural and remote communities, the locking down, not being able to leave or anything coming in, that's very important to mention. The health concerns, many of our community, our artists community, our broader community have underlying health issues and put us in a high risk situation as well to this particular virus. So we're often in in this physical distancing, to use that term, but social solidarity.
Yes.
It says here, Jane Sligo is saying, any First Nations electronic music artists, I'd love to hear from them and offer any support I can and discuss their ideas for future recovery. Thank you so much for the webinar. Yeah, you're very welcome. I have to bounce to another teleconference. So yeah, I know the feeling. We're all running from thing to thing at the moment as we try to get out there. So if there's anything specifically about the First Nations community that you want to make sure people understand, just write to us here as well. Lorraine Fisherton saying, in New South Wales, we have projects for remote areas, Cobar, Walgett, The Ridge and Brewarrina, which are vital to the economic, social and emotional well-being of the communities. We had the next 3 weeks booked in to be community. However, in the course of 2 hours, the whole lot has been put on hold. This is a massive loss for our communities and leaves a massive hole in our cash flow. I feel that we are down over $30,000, but won't know for sure until we navigate through this process. You're absolutely right. Lan Levine saying, minimum 4 square meters per person in a 100 square meter room. There you go. That's a slightly different kind of figure. Not just about the number of people, but also about the density of the people in there. Yes, right. Land's going to start selling measuring tapes online. Good for you. I think that's an important thing to do. Galaxy S9 saying, thanks for the meeting. Don't forget we are all artists and we have capacity. Oh, you've just jumped off the thing there. Sorry about that, Galaxy S9. And be ideal to use this time for development, Delene says, pre-production and studio recordings. What funding is out there that we can support artists through this isolation period? Mm-hmm. So development time, development money might be useful as well. It'll be interesting because one of the biggest issues I think is about, do you use grant systems or do you use devolved funding systems to do this as well?
I think that's what we'll all be working through, but I think that's really great to identify that particular creative development period is probably a very important, worthwhile period to support at this stage.
So if you can't be working for audiences, how are you developing the work that you're doing and how do we get the support to you for that as well? I know in Queensland there's conversations about, is it a grant process or is it in fact, an organisation is made in charge of distributing things in a different way? Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll take that on spec and have a little look at that as well. Okay, Joanne Driesen says, first and foremost, in ensuring that the well-being of First Nations artists that I'm currently engaged with, a number of artists that I have made contact with are very anxious and overwhelmed, yes, about their income, and I'm trying to reassure them they are not alone, that I can at the very least try to provide them with the most current and relevant information that may provide some form of hope. I'm also looking at continuing to honour existing projects and be delivered in different ways, i.e. online, phones, safe distancing, connections to enable creative collaborations, but of course still require approvals. Yes, absolutely right. Yes, Julie Goff saying it's a creative development timeout, which is rare, yes. And what funding is there is coming through. Malcolm Maloney, Malcolm Jackamar, coming through loud and clear in Albury. Great to hear from you there. Welcome. The Prime Minister is making another announcement live now. Oh, sorry, we can't slip to him right now, but we'll hopefully get some more things as well. Galaxy S9, hello, welcome back. All events cancelled in Yarrabah, including the Yarrabah Music Festival. What happens to allocated funding for these events? Well, here's the question. Will there be an allowance to carry over into the future, or can they disperse those monies to existing contracts?
It's a good question. I think we'll look at all of that.
Yeah, so those organisations that have events and have funding, will they be allowed to disperse some of that funding to honour the existing contracts? That will be an interesting thing to do. Or do they have to carry it on, hopefully not returning it, goodness. Alvarina Johnson, you're Galaxy S9. Hello. Thanks, guys, for being in the meeting. Don't forget we are all artists. Yes, we've said that one. Just have have a capacity to bring joy, hope, distraction, and play into our spaces during this time. Yes, don't forget our role as artists as well. And Victoria is happy to work with states, WA in particular, to help where needed, setting these things up. I guess the different online things we're talking about. Patricia Ajay from the Australia Council saying funding variations can be requested for Australia Council grants. Contact the grants team at Australia Council. So if you are the recipient of public funds, especially Australia Council in this case, and you wish to disperse some of the monies, make sure that you just get the request the variation of grant from the Australia Council. It sounds like they'll be open to some negotiation there, how that works. Dan Mitchell saying 100 plus Indigenous artists and crew affected by the cancellation of our upcoming event, Wominjeka Festival, one of the many events and exhibitions affecting our mob here in the west of Melbourne. I hear you, Dan. A big thing. Emily Murphy, I think it is, dispersing money. I'm honouring the contracts I have with artists for an event we do in Brisbane. The First Nations event is weekly and we can't go ahead. I am paying the artists regardless and asking them to stream a performance live until the end of June. It is allocated money, and while it's not legally required, it is ethically and morally the correct thing to do. It'd be great to get some guidance from the Australia Council about the kind of ethical and moral position, as well as some of the legal issues, to say, you know, the grant conditions say you can't do something, but how do we get through that?
I think we're all of these particular suggestions are great, because we'll look into that, because I think flexibility is the key focus at the moment as we realise people are trying to manage lots of things. So all of this will be part of a consideration, and we will look at that, we'll look at the legals, and we'll look at what people want to do, so that we can give you a good response on all of those grants to date. So that should be something that we can come to you next week with.
Yep. Silvano is saying, how do we develop realistic advice for remote communities that listens to First Nations experiences? And then how does that information actually get to people in remote communities? So that'll be a very big and important way. What's the communication network? I think also as we go along, there'll be so many different mistakes and things that happen as we go through, but these networks, how do we get information in and out? And often, how do we get our leadership, in this case, the Prime Minister, to take this seriously along the way as well? You know, as much as he's our leader.
There's lots of endeavours from different sections of the arts industry. I know Live Performance Australia have been very proactive. NAVA being proactive, APRA being proactive. So all of that is terrific work that's being done, and some of you may be affiliated with those particular organisations or not. So in this respect, this particular forum offers us a window into what First Nations needs and can feed into all those other discussions that are happening to really ensure that the message is heard at the highest levels, and that there is a response through that stimulus package to the arts and culture in Australia and also First Nations. So that's really important, that you keep feeding information through, and also developing what you see as solutions to how you manage it, both at a sole operator level, at an arts organisational level, at a community level. And some really good points are coming up here, especially about communication, ensuring that those channels are clear and people are getting information, they're feeding information.
Daniel Riley's asking the question of are only First Nations major performing arts company Bangarra, can they do things to help the small to medium and independent artists? Is there a mechanism through which that can help? Philip Watkins also writing, Desart is messaging to work with health clinics, aged care and other agencies needing to work together. Priority to get close, concise and relevant information to support artists and art-centred businesses. That's, I think, really important, the clear and concise. Some art centres at risk of insolvency if measures to support operational needs are not addressed. Okay, that's good to say. Thank you very much for that. A positive initiative from Ruth. We have called out to community to go and collect materials this week, kelp and shells and wood, so that we can deliver to our elders and artists that when they're isolated or physically separated, we can continue to create, exploring options for online sales point. Any advice how to set up would be useful. That's that online sales point that we keep talking about as well. Helena Goulash saying more people attend arts and cultural activities in Australia overall. than the number of attending sports. Remembering that correctly, yes, I think that's absolutely right. Stats available for the case of the federal government. Agreed. And what's the live performance online fee? Miranda Donnelly is saying $250 plus $100 royalty to retain presentation online for 12 months. So a fee of $250 and $100. There's question marks there. So maybe we could find out what some of those online fees are, so that we can come back to you, Miranda, with some of that information as well. I'm aware we're coming up to the last 10 minutes of this webinar. We'll be finishing at 3:30. So we'll look at some of that information. You can continue to ask questions and throw information up on this board. So we'll have a little kind of sifting through how to go through that as well. Another one here saying, anonymous attendee, we are looking at how we can find funds to improve our digital infrastructure to deliver public programs and commercial opportunities and sales for artists. Currently, we don't have great capacity and this needs development. Will the government provide funding opportunities for that? I imagine that becomes a secondary issue. The first one, we're trying to get money and financial support to artists will be the primary focus, and then we'll find these other layers to really consolidate and things as well. Will Bianca Beetson saying, will there be advocacy from the Australia Council for artists whose grants are impacted by COVID-19? Yes, there will be. Where that advocacy will be going, we'll find out. But I think open to negotiation and conversation. And as Patricia Ajay was saying before, you can actually, if you have a grant already and you are being impacted, just contact the grants team at the Australia Council to look for a variation of grant or a change of conditions of grant or all of that stuff to go through. Katina Olsen says that she's okay. She's scared and concerned and seeing an immediate loss of the work of around $10,000 in the last 4 days. She's safe and staying with family and trying to, it's gone. She's looking after herself. So lots of strength to you, and I hope it's all going well. There's lots of different issues coming through. What I'm going to do, though, in this last 10 minutes, I just want to hand over to you to just say, what are the things you need to know? What are the pieces of information you need to know to help you along the way? There's lots of general feelings of staying safe to everyone. The artist fee structures of online work, that's good. You need to know that. There's the sense constantly about the sole trader. What does the sole trader or individual need to do, or the casualised workforce, what do they need to do to put all that together? We know we want to get a list of all of those projects or festivals or events that are cancelled, so we have an argument to go to the federal government to say this is what's happening. The dollar amount that may be impacting on you is very useful. Julie Goff saying maybe Australia Council also works with each state, territory, arts organisations, Arts Tasmania, Arts Victoria, etc., to set up from their websites a First Nations artists portal for artists to provide info, so it can also be located in the Australia Council. Yes, I think this conversation about regional collaboration is also important, how you work regionally and locally and with allied kind of community services as well, arts and culture, health, education, these kind of things coming together in a regional response could be useful as well. Other things that you might need to do, bringing us together is very important in this crazy time, says Daniel Riley. So it's important to hold this space. And if you've just joined us, there's 147 of you online as we're coming to the end. This idea that next Friday, we'll again get the message out there that next Friday we'll have something similar to this. This idea of a webinar kind of thing. We're looking around the room saying, yeah, we can do that, can't we? We can do that. To make all that happen, because I'm hearing a lot of the responses here how important that is, that we have a place to share, a place to come together and to share some of these ideas. And to be honest, just even to say you're not alone in the sense of feeling scared, a sense of feeling isolated socially, and how we need to, even if we're physically isolated, that we are socially together. But that seems to be important. The thread seemed to have frozen a bit there, so you may have stopped. Yes, this interesting thing around the digital landscape and how do we maintain our intellectual, cultural property as well. That's very important along the way, because the digital landscape can sometimes, things can fly in lots of different directions outside of the control mechanism. So keep an eye on that. Have a look at what you want to share and where you want to share it. Some conversation there from Jan Graham, wondering, I also wonder how bushfire affected communities are faring with this double whammy. Yes, there might be need to have some work there around some conversations about how that is happening.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at all that stuff. We are coming up to the last 5 minutes of this webinar. As I've been saying, this is all being recorded, and you'll be able to access this on the Australia Council website. We've pretty much committed to next Friday having another one of these gatherings, hopefully where I'm not talking my head off like I do, but that we can be answering some of these questions that have been raised along the way as well. Try to stop me talking. You know,
no, we can't.
No, I can stop me talking.
We don't want them to stop talking.
But some of these questions, some of these pertinent questions,
are really important. So if you want to put forward what you really want to discuss and get solutions around, please do that. Please keep doing that. I imagine during the course of the next few months, if we continue these forums at whatever period they'll be continued, that if you want to go deep sea diving on these topics, then we'll make sure that there's information prepared and we can discuss that to answer some of your questions, as well as to really introduce other resources or other activity that's occurring across the country where you may want to align with that. So there are collectives that could be built through that.
Right, I think we've come to a bit of a slowdown in the information. Spread the information out there. We're finishing up in 4 minutes. I just want to take this time and say thank you so much for coming on board, being part of this hour-and-a-half conversation about what's important to us all. It might sound a little bit like it's a one-way street. We're just talking at you, but we're getting so many things coming through at the moment. It's very, very important. And just to say that if you are feeling alone, if you're feeling isolated, not just physically, but also, you know, in your heart, reach out and talk to people who are around you. Get on the phone, talk to people, because it's so important that we don't lose our sense of hope about what's going on. The government is very much talking about the bridge, this idea of understanding where we are now and going, what is it that we are going to do in the future? And we need to keep that future to the fore of our minds as well. So please imagine the future. What will the future look like, and how do we prepare for it? Because I think that it's so important that we have a future, that, you know, we use our creativity, our cultural awareness, our sense of long history to imagine what the future will be. There will be a time when this finishes and we've got the next thing. There's so many things around the digital world that people are talking about now, how is inclusive and keeps working. We've talked a lot about the broader community of health, tourism, of education in particular, the very important responsibility we have to the casualised workforce, the artists, the contractors, the individuals who are out there, and the idea of communication, that we need to be clear and concise about the information that's going back and forward, and that we're doing it together in whatever community that we're in. We're winding up now. We're coming to the last 2 minutes. And just to say thank you, Lydia and the Australia Council, for setting this up. I think we're getting lots of thank yous along the way, just to say, you know, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for participating and for your generous time. And we hope this is the beginning of a really good conversation we're going to have about how we chart our future and how we determine our future. So thank you.
There's 130 people online. Thank you for staying on for all this time as we're coming to the end. But just to say, you know, the 130 people, there's at least thousands more out there that aren't online at the moment. How do you spread the word and how do you stay connected? How do some of the conversations we've had here, how does that manifest, and how do you keep people connecting along the way? Come back to the Australia Council website. come back and re-look at this if it's useful or suggested on. There's some things, people saying maybe even some Facebook relationships as well that might be useful. As you know, everyone knows the communities on Facebook. Doesn't the Aboriginal community own Facebook? Feels like it. Talk to my family; they're everywhere. Oh my God! But it's all there, and you know, I know we're making jokes and we're keeping it light, but we know it's a very serious time out there, and there's more serious time ahead. So please keep uplifted, keep protective of our families and our land and our community. And we look forward to talking to you again next week on Friday. But keep looking on the website and we might be able to answer some of these questions along the way.
Please do.
But thank you so much. And please wash your hands regularly. You know, love your family even if you can't touch them regularly. And we'll see you again very soon. Stay strong.
See you.